Good morning, everyone. Good morning, dear colleagues. We're going to start the event because it was planned to start at 9, so let us go. Welcome to this knowledge event, AfDB and the Civil Society Lessons for Stronger Partnerships. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Najad Lindsay. I am a knowledge management officer and I work for the Independent Development Evaluation, and I am more than happy to moderate today's session. This event will be serving as a platform for discussion around the evaluation of the bank's civil society engagement, and will unfold as follows. The first part will be focusing on the past, how has the bank engaged with civil society? The second part will be focusing on the present. What is the bank doing to improve civil society engagement? And at last, the third part will be focusing on the future, what is needed to leverage the bank's civil society engagement. In between all the presentations that they will be having, a question and answer session is planned for you participants to be able to take part in the discussion. So before we start, I would just like to go over the usual housekeeping rules, which are: please do not forget to mute your microphones to avoid any background noises. Simultaneous interpretation is available. You have the little globe icon at the bottom of your screen, so you can click on it and it will be translated from French to English or English to French. During the Q&A sessions, please do not forget to use the functionality to raise your hands to ask questions. And also you can ask questions via the chat, and we'll be picking some of them for the panelists to address them. Without further ado, I will leave the floor to our evaluator general, Karen Roth-Munsterman, for the opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Najad, and good morning, everyone. Good morning to our speakers, to AfDB colleagues, to representatives of civil society organizations, and to all other participants. I'm very happy to see you all today for this knowledge event on the AfDB and civil society, Lessons for Stronger Partnerships. The AfDB has been engaging with civil society for nearly 25 years. It first adopted a policy in 1999 and a handbook in 2001. This was followed by a civil society engagement framework in 2012 and an action plan in 2019. For the AfDB, the role of civil society goes beyond advocacy. Civil society organizations are key stakeholders and implementing partners in the bank's policies, strategies, and operations. And the bank is fully aware that the success of its development projects and programs can only be achieved through their active engagement, consultation, and participation. This leads us to ask, to what extent has the bank's conceptualization of civil society engagement been relevant and coherent? How effectively and efficiently has civil society engagement been operationalized in the bank at the corporate, country, and project level? And to the extent that there are shortcomings, how can the bank do better? To answer these questions, in 2020, IDEV conducted an evaluation of the bank's engagement with civil society covering the 2012-2019 period. The evaluation was presented to our board of directors and published in February 2021. The overall objective of the evaluation was to assess the bank's civil society engagement since 2012, and to inform the design and implementation of a new AfDB civil society engagement strategy. Today, together with the bank's Gender, Women, and Civil Society department, we are co-hosting this session to share knowledge and experiences around this evaluation and its follow-up. Our speakers have either taken part in the evaluation and/or actively engaged with civil society in the context of their work for the AfDB. We hope that their presentations will improve your understanding of the approaches and practices for engagement with civil society within the bank. And we also look forward to hearing your experiences and views. We really wish for this session to be an opportunity for discussion and exchange with you on the key findings, lessons, and recommendations of the evaluation, how they have been applied since the presentation of the evaluation 18 months ago, and how the bank is proceeding with developing a new, robust civil society engagement strategy. So we look forward to a fruitful discussion, and without further ado, let's start the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. So we will move on to the first part, which is the past. How has the bank engaged with civil society? For this part, Girma Kumbi, our Chief Evaluation Officer at IDEV, will be doing a presentation for the overview of the main findings, lessons, and recommendations of the evaluation of the bank's engagement with civil society organizations. Thank you, Girma.
Thank you, Nadaj, and good morning, everyone, colleagues and participants of this event. Yeah, Karen provided a very good remark around the evaluation we have done and its contribution to the effectiveness of this, to the civil society engagement. So I will briefly make the presentation around the key findings and the lessons and recommendation of this particular evaluation. So next slide. So I'll go briefly the evaluation objectives and the evaluation approach that we employed in arriving on, in generating evidences and informing the evaluation, as well as I will make presentation of the key finding of this evaluation around the relevance, coherence, and also around the effectiveness and efficiency of a bank's engagement with civil society, particularly by focusing on the three key engagement areas, which is outreach and communication, consultation, and partnership as well. Then I'll give you some highlight around the lessons as well as the proposed recommendation came out from this evaluation. The main objective of this evaluation is particularly to assess the extent, the degree of engagement between the civil society and the bank in general, as well as to understand the type, the capacity of the civil society in relation to particularly the bank's mandate to achieve sustainable results. And we will, the other objective is basically, this is the purpose of the objective, the purpose of the evaluation, which is to generate lessons and a recommendation, particularly in view of designing a new civil society engagement strategies. The evaluation covered the period between 2012 and 2019, particularly this is based on the 2012 CSC framework. Okay, next slide. In terms of the evaluation approach and methodology, basically we have a theory of change that was constructed in order to be served as analytical framework for this evaluation. And it shows how different activities of the bank related to CSC contributed to, development result, and as well as why the bank engages with the civil society in order to achieve what and how that happens. So for this, we use the multiple source of evidences from bank document, particularly policy strategy related documents. As we have also conducted country case studies, about 5 country case studies, even though due to COVID, finally we narrowed down to 3 countries. We looked at also the evaluative evidence that was available from other development institutions around the civil society organization. We conducted also key informant interviews and focus group discussion of the bank staff, civil society, and officials in the country case studies. Online surveys were administered, even though the response rate was low, but it gave us a very good insight to triangulate with other evidence we have. Next slide. So I will go now directly to the key findings. Basically, these are the key, more brief. So I will encourage our participants to go to our main evaluation report on IDEV website for more detail. But now I'll just focus for the purpose of this event on the key one that helps us to engage in a fruitful discussion. So I will start with the relevance and the coherence of the bank, the civil society engagement approach in the bank in general. So here the evaluation found that conceptually the civil society engagement is well defined in banks' 1919 policy and the subsequent guiding documents. It was clear, very valid understanding in those documents. So the policy and other guiding document provide at least a clear clarity around the civil society engagement in general. So what we found here is, what's not clear is this clarity in the policy and guideline were not reflected in the other bank policies and strategy. For example, if we design, let's say, agriculture sector policy or a strategy, how we mainstream civil society engagement in those documents. So when we review various strategic or policy documents, there is a little reference to civil society engagement. So in general, that the conceptual clarity provided by the CSE policy and the guiding document were not translated into more practices through when it comes to the operation as well. So, and that one point. The second is, so these various CSE documents themselves were not well and equally understood by bank staff in order to, apply them in the day-to-day activities when they're thinking about mainstreaming civil society, which is very, very important, particularly in order to practically take forward the CSE in development process. One important aspect also that the evaluation found is the monitoring and the evaluation framework of the civil society engagement was not clear, because M&A helps to measure as well the results and help us to learn, to reflect on what happened and how to improve. So we have a gap around that in order to, but when it comes to the civil society engagement. The other important point was for the proper implementation of those initiatives around civil society engagement. Adequate staffing and funding is very important, but we found that this was a big gap, particularly until 2016. So there is no adequate institution to take forward or to follow up on the civil society engagement in the bank. But after the establishment of the civil society division, things have been greatly evolved and improved a lot. Now I'll go to the findings around particularly the effectiveness of civil society engagement, effectiveness and efficiency. As I said, I will more focus on the three aspects of civil society engagement as elaborated in the 2012 civil society engagement framework. The first is communication and outreach. So this is particularly where the bank has a good disclosure policy, as you know, at corporate level, and we have different type of tool developed in the bank in order to inform the bank's activity in the countries, and that provide information to the civil society for transparency, accountability, as well as implementation support to bank work. So we have project portals, CSA databases. We had also civil society tab on the bank website, which are helping help to disseminate information about the bank's work. But what we have noticed here, which is very important, is mostly the bank provide information or give information to the civil society just in one way. So we have not seen a strong two-way communication in terms of where the information also come from the civil society to the bank easily. So if the civil society want to engage with the bank, how can it should engage, and how it follow up requests come from, and engage in the development processes. So two-way communication is important, which we need to improve more around that. One of very good approach developed by the bank is the CS or Open Days, civil society organization Open Days. This has helped a lot in improving, the reaching out to the civil societies and, creating awareness about the bank work and so on. So this was very effective. The only challenge we have is it's not done consistently across our region, in the regional member countries. So this is very important in terms of particularly enhancing our engagement with the civil society at country level. So very consistent approach across all countries are very critical to achieve the desired result. And the other challenge we had came out in this around this communication is particularly related to CSO Open Days. Even though it is effective, still there is less evidence around their effectiveness, since there is no data. Systematical data is collected and reported on those events. Where did this CSO Open Days led, in the past, in improving, our engagement with this. So these are the area we are looking at to improve in the future. So I will go to the next. Yeah. The second important area where we highlighted here is the consultation and dialogue, because one of the area that the bank engage with civil society, or why we need civil society, is we do consultation during the design and implementation of our strategies, policies, and support at the country level. And also to engage civil societies in the dialogue with the government and so on. Here we have one strong platform, which is the CSO Forum. This is a very good example, and particularly at the bank corporate level, where the bank undertake, particularly in the side event of annual meeting of the bank in the past. So that has brought civil societies and the bank together, particularly at higher level, in order to influence the development agenda of the bank. But there are areas that came out to us, particularly in this evaluation, is the diversity of the civil society which are participating on this CSO forum did not reflect, the African continent as such. So mostly we have CSOs coming from one region, from West African region, but the coverage from other regions are underrepresented overall. And also in terms of institution and so on, we have also CSO committee in the bank, which of course from the bank as well as from civil society. The link between this CSO committee and the CSO forum is also weak in leading really the dialogue with the bank. So that is the area we may need to strengthen. And the other important issue we flagged in this evaluation is the engagement of civil society at country level, particularly during the preparation of country strategy paper. That is the entry point where we can influence, the civil society can influence the development priorities in the country. So still that one has to be done also in a very consistent and sustained way. So we have seen really a lot of things are improving after the civil society division came in place. Now we know that there is a guideline prepared under preparation by the civil society division to guide how the bank should do with civil society at country level, particularly at the preparation of CSV or country strategy preparation. That's really important thing, particularly to engage the civil societies in the policy dialogue. Good. Then the third area that we looked at it is partnership. This is where the bank and civil societies create partnership, a working relationship with civil society, particularly in terms of project implementation. Is it as implementer or only as providing information or advocacy for different aspects? But so here both internal and external collaboration is very important. Internally within the bank, the collaboration between civil society division and other departments such as safeguard on environment and safeguard issues, with also compliance review mechanism units, as well as on the anti-corruption. All these are very important issues that we highlighted in this evaluation, where we need more strength there to really effectively create a partnership in there. So that's very key. And in terms of when it comes to civil society, we have seen also when the bank partner with the civil society, there is no clear criteria. Should we engage with which type of civil society? So it's very important. We cannot involve, there are many of them at the country level or the region, but the bank should involve only with selected very influential ones. Otherwise, that will create a problem overall. So that's one thing when it comes to partnership. The other is from the bank staff side. Also, sometimes it's not clear what is the value add of engaging with civil society to the bank. We see memorandum of understanding signed, but those things does not go beyond that. We don't see results. So sometimes that creates a question for the bank staff. So it should be strong partnership, which should go beyond signing memorandum of understanding, but delivering result is very important overall. And we see also some sort of partnership with the academia is also very important, particularly when it comes for credibility of development results. Academias are really a good partner when it comes in verifying the results we have seen in the ground or this, but we don't see clear procedure to involve them around that. Next slide. Okay, let me take you through the key lessons here, because this is one of the lessons and recommendations are the key outcome of the evaluation, which help us to influence the way we work. So we have about 5 key lessons here. The first is internal awareness by the bank staff. We found that this is very key for effective engagement with the civil society. Particularly, we have to adequately mainstream civil society work in our operation, policy, and strategy. So due to limited awareness by the task managers in the bank, we don't see adequately integrating civil society in our work. Other important key lesson is the presence of M&E framework together with the learning approach are also very important, because when we do something, we have to aim also to measure those things and learn out of that, and then strategize for improving the future work. The third key lesson is, as I mentioned earlier, the bank there is no clear guideline or criteria to select the civil society to engage with. But for this, I think a clear accreditation system for the CSOs are very, very important, so that the bank can easily select from accredited CSOs, and that will help the bank really even to reduce operational as well as reputational risk. The fourth key lesson is the two-way communication is very important. That will help to facilitate really meaningful engagement with the civil society and enhance the desired result. Finally, the fifth one is the mapping of the civil society at regional as well as of course, the country level. That's also important because sometimes if we are looking to work with a civil society who is, for example, in health sector, we have to know which civil society is more, prominent, popular, well, effective, have the capacity to do that. So that's very important for the bank really to know which civil societies are really active in each country, in each region, and in which sector. That will help us a lot going forward. Next slide. Yeah, and now I come to the final slide, particularly on the recommendation. Basically, we propose recommendation on 3 main areas based on their finding and the lessons we have just presented. The first one is about enhancing really awareness and having shared understanding of the civil society engagement in the bank is key. Here it is important to have proper guiding document tools to inform the staff at corporate region level as well as at the country level. Internal collaboration between various departments is also key here. Developing M&E framework and also even revising the result framework. We should have indicator on civil society in the corporate level result framework in general, in order to guide the proper measurement of the civil society aspect. So all this helps to really feed into the knowledge management as well as proper learning take place around this. The second key area is about adequately resourcing the civil society operation in general and activities is very important, like to develop operational guideline, how to mainstream, for example, in the country strategy paper or in the sector strategies or in a project. That's very important. Funding is one issue which was highlighted, particularly in terms of civil society sometimes look at the bank as a source of fund, but usually due to its mandate, the bank may not give directly funding to the civil society. So there is an opportunity here to explore the trust fund in general. And yeah, staffing is, as you know, is also key at headquarter, regional level, particularly working in order to support the operational staffs in really leading the CSC in general. The last recommendation is about strengthening a policy dialogue, because the civil societies are partner to the bank, particularly in helping the bank and the country to develop the right policy and strategies at the country level. So that's very important. So there should be clarity around that in terms of institution, and particularly at country level, how we do the dialogue with civil society, how we involve when we do dialogue with the country, how we can involve the civil society in that dialogue. All these are very important aspects that we recommended here. And of course, systematically or regularizing the CSO events, those open days are also very important way to make more effective engagement. Thank you very much. I stop here. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Girma. So Mr. Kumbi focused on the main findings, the lessons, and the recommendations. And that makes us move to the second part of this session, which is the present. What is the bank doing to improve civil society engagement? And Mrs. Zineb Touré, who is the division manager for the civil society and community engagement, civil society and community engagement division, will be doing a presentation on the status of implementation of the management response to the evaluation. Mrs. Zineb Touré will be starting the presentation in French and finishing it in English. So just so that you know, you can switch with the interpretation icon. Thank you.
Thank you, Najat. Thank you and good morning, colleagues. Let me begin by thanking all of you for this participation to today's knowledge event. We are almost 92 participants. This is a good participation, and thank you very much. But also special thanks to BDEV, to Karen and her team for this evaluation of civil society engagement that marks a significant milestone with regard to civil society engagement in the bank. My presentation will focus on the implementation of the action point in the management response that we present and approved by the board in January 2021. Next, please. On the status of implementation, I will start by saying that overall management welcomes BDEV evaluation on civil society engagement and acknowledge the findings and recommendations of BDEV. As presented just now, 3 key recommendations have been made to increase awareness, build a common understanding, and better resource civil society engagement. Management also proposed action points to respond to the evaluation that are being implemented to address the challenges and gaps in the finding of the evaluation. Next. Just to recall the 3 evaluations, the 2 recommendations that Girma presented just now. Recommendation 1, enhance awareness and common understanding on the importance, purpose, and potential value added of civil society engagement to the bank's mandate. Recommendation 2, enhance resourcing approach for effective implementation of civil society engagement. And the third recommendation was to strengthen civil society engagement in policy and dialogue at country and regional levels. Next. Okay, let me shift now in French to present the status of implementation. OK. Par rapport à chacune, donc vous pouvez aller sur votre icône interprétation pour passer en français. Par rapport aux 3 recommandations, pour chacune des recommandations, IDEV a suivi cela de sous-recommandations. Et la banque a proposé des points d'action pour adresser ces recommandations et je vous présente le statut à ce jour. Pour la première recommandation, d'améliorer, de renforcer la sensibilisation et la compréhension mutuelle sur le Civil Society Engagement, 5 sous-recommandations avaient été formulées. C'est de communiquer largement dans la banque sur les différents outils et mécanismes qui sont en train d'être élaborés ou seront élaborés, de renforcer la coopération mutuelle dans la banque sur l'engagement avec la société civile et de développer un mécanisme de suivi-évaluation qui va être aligné au cadre de mesure des résultats, qui clarifie le rôle de la société civile, mais aussi surtout la valeur ajoutée, et d'intégrer cela, comme je l'ai dit, dans le cadre de mesure de résultats, mais aussi de prioriser la gestion des connaissances en matière d'engagement avec la société civile. À ce niveau, la banque s'était engagée à communiquer avec la société, sur la société civile, avec la collaboration du département en charge de la communication, PCR, de mettre en place une plateforme interactive de connaissances et de renforcement des capacités de la société civile, de développer un mécanisme de suivi-évaluation et aussi d'entreprendre des études économiques et sectorielles en matière d'engagement avec la société civile comme moyen puissant de advocacy, de plaidoyer sur le continent et dans la banque. À ce jour, la base de données de la société civile que vous connaissez tous maintenant est en train d'être mise à jour régulièrement parce que c'est un travail au quotidien et cette base de données est utilisée à l'interne. Basée sur cette base de données, nous avons développé une plateforme interactive de communication, de collaboration, mais aussi de renforcement des capacités de la société civile. Ça, c'est une plateforme qui va être lancée lors du Forum de la société civile en octobre 2022 et ça va révolutionner la relation entre la banque et la société civile parce qu'elle est interactive. Donc, ça sera des échanges mutuels permanents entre les deux acteurs et même des partenaires extérieurs. On nous a conseillé d'intégrer le mécanisme de suivi-évaluation dans le cadre de l'élaboration de la stratégie. Au lieu de développer un mécanisme séparé, nous attendons que la stratégie soit développée pour disposer d'un cadre de suivi-évaluation, bien sûr, aligné au cadre de mesure des résultats de la banque. Et l'année dernière, nous avons engagé une étude économique et sectorielle sur le rôle de la société civile dans la croissance économique en Afrique avec le département des comptes économistes. C'est une étude très, très informative qui sera aussi disséminée dès qu'elle sera approuvée. Next, please. Pour ce qui est des ressources pour une mise en œuvre effective, efficace de l'engagement de la banque avec la société civile, la banque s'était engagée à développer des guidelines, des guides d'intégration de l'engagement de la société civile dans les documents de stratégie pays, de développer des outils, des boîtes à outils pour intégrer la société civile dans l'élaboration, dans le cycle des projets et aussi de développer des notes d'orientation pour les journées portes ouvertes avec la société civile dans les pays membres régionaux, dans les bureaux de la banque. Un engagement était aussi de développer un programme d'action, un programme de renforcement des capacités en matière d'engagement avec la société civile qui va toucher aussi bien le staff à l'interne que la société civile elle-même et de mettre en place une équipe de focal point de l'engagement de la société civile dans les bureaux pays, mais parallèlement, continuer les discussions avec les ressources humaines et le budget pour une allocation efficiente des ressources humaines à la division société civile. Explorer les possibilités de mettre en place un trust fund qui va adresser le financement de la société civile au sein de la banque. À ce jour, les guidelines pour intégrer la société civile dans les documents de stratégie pays est complété et elle va, à ce stade, nous sommes à l'envoi à Opsom pour l'approbation. Les toolkits pour intégrer la société civile dans les projets est aussi en cours d'élaboration. Nous avons déjà le Inception Report de cette étude. Les notes d'orientation pour les CSO Open Days sont finalisées, vont être envoyées au management pour validation. Et le programme de renforcement de capacité de la société civile, avec un partenariat avec le département ECAD, le département en charge du capacity building dans la banque, est en train d'être finalisé aussi pour être envoyé au management pour approbation. Nous avons élaboré des termes de référence, des focal points dans les pays et nous sommes à la phase de la révision des pairs. En matière de financement, nous avons engagé l'année dernière une étude sur les trust funds existants dans la banque et comment ils financent l'engagement avec la société civile ou comment ils financent la société civile elle-même. Et c'est une étude qui nous a édifié sur les possibilités qu'il y a déjà au sein de la banque. Et nous sommes en discussion avec firmes par rapport aux mécanismes financiers. Les discussions sont en train de s'acheminer vers comment on peut renforcer les mécanismes existants déjà dans la banque pour que la société civile ait plus accès à travers les call for proposals qui sont en train d'être faits. Mais aussi, nous n'écartons pas, nous envisageons aussi à terme d'avoir un fonds dédié, spécifique dédié à l'engagement de la société civile. Next, please. Enfin, la dernière recommandation, c'est le renforcement du partenariat avec la société civile dans le dialogue pays, dans les bureaux, au niveau régional et au niveau pays. Par rapport à ça, la banque s'est engagée dans le cadre de la nouvelle stratégie qui sera élaborée de mettre un accent particulier sur le dialogue pays avec la société civile et de mettre en place des comités tripartites gouvernement, société civile, banque dans les pays pour renforcer le dialogue sur cette thématique et d'institutionnaliser les JPO, les journées portes ouvertes avec la société civile qu'on appelle les CSO Open Days, qui sont une plateforme très, très importante, et l'évaluation vient de nous rappeler, de collaboration et de partenariat entre la banque et la société civile qui a fait ses preuves ces dernières années dans les bureaux, dans les pays membres régionaux. À ce jour, la task force de la stratégie, de la nouvelle stratégie a été mise en place et nous avons déjà une note conceptuelle qui va être soumise à SMCC. Pour ce qui est du dialogue au niveau régional, il faut dire que l'année dernière, nous avons organisé 5 forums sous-régionaux en lieu et place du forum annuel continental avec la société civile qui a eu un énorme succès avec l'engagement, avec l'implication des bureaux régionaux à travers les bureaux pays, mais aussi les directions régionales. Et nous avons eu le plaisir d'avoir les DG et les DDG qui ont pris part activement à ces différents forums et qui ont été d'ailleurs présidés par ces responsables au niveau des régions. À ce jour, de l'évaluation à aujourd'hui, nous avons intégré la société civile dans au moins 20 country strategic papers, donc 20 documents de stratégie pays. Nous avons eu des consultations avec la société civile et nous avons élaboré des notes techniques qui ont été ajoutées comme notes techniques additionnelles pour l'élaboration des documents de stratégie pays. À ce jour, nous avons aussi 4 pays qui ont déjà mis en place leur comité tripartite, société civile, banque et gouvernement. Il s'agit du Burkina, Lesotho, Eswatini et le Zimbabwe. Et nous sommes en train de travailler sur une initiative avec les bureaux pays de la Guinée, du Mali et du Burkina, ces pays où nous avons eu des changements institutionnels récents suite à des coups d'État, pour une initiative d'engagement de la société civile pour la cohésion sociale et la résilience dans ces pays. Et nous avons aussi, avec la collaboration du département des États fragiles, commencer le renforcement des capacités, les formations des organisations de la société civile dans les pays en transition. La première session s'est tenue en mars pour les pays de la région du Sahel et il est prévu une formation pour les pays de la région du lac Tchad Bassin et les pays de la Corne de l'Afrique et d'autres pays fragiles en 2023. Next, please. OK, donc ça, c'est ce qu'on peut retenir pour la mise en œuvre de ce que, là où la banque s'était engagée à répondre aux différentes préoccupations et les gaps et les challenges de l'évaluation. Il faut dire que des progrès significatifs ont été faits depuis lors et nos différents points d'action sont en train d'être mis en œuvre et cela est l'objet de suivi régulier. Nous avons commencé, comme je l'ai dit, l'élaboration de la stratégie d'engagement de la société civile qui sera la toute première stratégie de la banque sur ce thème et ça va donner l'opportunité de consulter encore aussi bien la banque que la société civile au niveau central, mais aussi dans les pays et dans les régions. Le programme de renforcement des capacités qui est en cours d'élaboration, une fois finalisé et validé, va permettre de travailler avec une société civile très informée sur la banque, équipée pour bien collaborer avec la banque. Et c'est un des objectifs de ce programme, parce que ce qu'on nous dit, c'est que la société civile n'a pas tout à fait les capacités de travailler avec la banque souvent. Et aussi, à l'interne, les différents guidance notes, les guidelines, les outils que nous sommes en train d'élaborer vont être l'objet de dissémination et de renforcement des capacités du staff pour mieux prendre en charge la question de l'engagement de la société civile dans leur travail au quotidien. Enfin, et cela a été dit, le Forum de la société civile, qui est la plateforme continentale d'engagement par excellence avec la société civile, prend une dimension à l'échelle de la banque cette année et va devenir un outil puissant de communication, d'échange et de partenariat avec la société civile, aussi bien à l'interne qu'à l'externe. Voilà résumé le statut, l'état des lieux de la mise en œuvre des recommandations de l'évaluation et je vous remercie et reste disponible pour d'éventuelles questions.
Thank you very much, Zeynep, for this presentation. So far, we've had presentations from AfDB staff who worked on the evaluation, and we would like to hear from a civil society organization who took part in the evaluation. This is why we will be giving the floor to Omolora Balogun. Oh, sorry, it's Nana, I'm sorry. Nana Fadzinu, apologies, from the West Africa Civil Society Institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Najat. And I want to thank BDEV and also particularly the civil society division of the bank for the work that has gone into engaging civil society and the whole evaluation process to inform the bank's engagement and make it better. Can we go to the next slide, please? Just to introduce WACSI. WACSI is the West Africa Civil Society Institute set up in 2007 by OCY, and our main focus is strengthening civil society in West Africa. We focus on capacity development, knowledge management, policy influencing, and advocacy. And currently for 2018 to 2022, we have been looking at different areas: civic space and enabling environment, youth and women's development, civil society sustainability, and technology for development. So that's just to introduce who WACSI is. We have been members of the AfDB Civil Society Committee for quite some time now. And we are happy to be part of the process. And can we go to the next slide just to state what we took part in the survey, the focus group discussions and the consultations during the evaluation process. We think that it was timely very relevant, and we also appreciate the fact that it was participatory and really got our engagements. The use of quantitative and qualitative data, we thought, enriched the process. For us, we think that it's important to engage civil society much more, leverage the expertise of civil society and the proximity of civil society in the bank's quest to have public support for its projects and initiatives. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Just to state exactly what it is that we've done with the bank so far. We have been engaged in the Civil Society Annual Forum, the strategy paper processes, particularly for the one in Ghana, we were a part of it. Learning, exchange, and co-creation of civil society engagement strategy. We've been very much a part of the work that's gone on the strategy. The regional sessions on the communication strategy, the work that was done on the AfDB firm, the ADF 16 replenishments, the engagement on the Sahel gender profiling, a couple of the open days in the RMCs. We engaged with the bank on the YEP for the ERI PURC work, particularly the beginning aspects of it in thinking through the project. Co-hosted some webinars with the bank, and also been engaged in looking at civil society mobilization, communications, and dissemination. So that's just to show where we are coming from on this because of our engagement with the bank in the past years and current year. Can we go to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Thank you. And so the findings of the bank, the actions in the management response do reflect the concerns, the challenges, and the setbacks that have been shared by civil society. And I would say, having been on the committee, it echoes a number of the things that committee members have stated over the years. Enhancing awareness is definitely one of the challenges. And we completely agree with that finding. Resourcing civil society continues to be one of the biggest challenges. We are glad that we are now looking at the trust fund. Earlier on, I saw a comment that one of our participants made also about the bank looking at some of its administrative resources to support civil society. The whole point is that, if you look at civil society as a partner in development, and then the bank has been set up mainly to support government. In terms of its partnership and looking at the member states that it's working with. But then if you want to engage civil society, which are critical partners in development, resourcing them is one of the key aspects. I'm glad that the evaluation has brought out the key area, not only for financial resourcing, but also human resourcing. And particularly if you look at within the bank and the fact that the bank's unit, civil society unit, is really looking at how we can work at the country level with bank staff to really engage more effectively. So for us, that is one of the key areas that we should be looking at. Now, strengthening civil society engagement in policy dialogue remains the other. One of the key challenges that we have had is that if you look at the CSPs, the country strategy papers that civil society has engaged in, yes, in the current years, you have seen that there's been an increase, and I want to commend the unit for pushing this. However, there remains a challenge. One, the fact that civil society does not really know or have a calendar or know what it is, when it is that these strategy papers are going to, that they have to engage the bank in looking at the strategy papers, having enough time and the information beforehand so that when they engage more meaningfully with information. In that process, because it's not just about ticking the box that you've consulted civil society, but it's about meaningful engagement. So some of these things, I mean, we need to look, if we are looking at strengthening civil society engagement, that must be one of the key areas that we are looking at. Facilitating regular learning and networking events on civil society engagement, and investing in strategic partnerships. I believe that one of the key areas that the evaluation brought out, which is critical and important, is one, the kind of civil society that the bank is engaging, and also how it is engaging civil society. And one of the tools that I believe that can be used more effectively is the Civil Society Committee, which has been set up, and I really think that COVID did really affect the way the committee engaged, because it really took off and was doing quite well, but has slowed down, and there needs to be a bit more looking at how to use the committee a lot more to have a more coordinated and effective engagement with civil society in the region. So that is one of the areas. Institutionalizing regular engagement and involvement of civil society at country and regional levels. If we address the human resource issue, if we look at the planning issue, if we look at coordination, we should be able to have something that is more institutionalized, so that you do not have the ad hoc. I mean, the way that it is engaged, sometimes ad hoc, you have short notice, and the engagement then is not meaningful. So that is one of the areas that I think it's great that it came out, and we definitely concur that with that point. Exploring alternative and dedicated funding, that has been said already. Enhancing the bank's capacity for effective engagement with CSOs and vice versa. Yes, and that also came out very clearly in the evaluation findings, that we must have bank staff and the bank's processes being more user-friendly to civil society, and really understanding the purpose and the value added of civil society's work for the bank and for development on the continent. Because we must admit that the bank's processes right from the beginning is perhaps not really structured to engage civil society. And so there must be that extra effort to enable that to happen. And that means that bank staff as well must have the capacity for engaging civil society and understanding what's the need even to work with civil society in the first place. So I think that is one of the key findings that we appreciate a lot. Updating civil society on the findings and actions of the management through webinars. So these results, I think it will be good. Why I must commend, again, the AfDB has come out as the most transparent institution. You are looking at a worldwide index, and that's clearly is one of the things that I think has contributed to this. So to be able to even update civil society on some of these findings through webinars, through different communication tools and mechanisms would be good. And then developing and financing the plans to execute the findings and actions of the management response. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So for us, we think that the recommendations are very relevant. They are on point. And if we want to look at a successful and meaningful civil society engagement with the bank and in the bank, by civil society and within the bank itself, this is the key areas that have come out, clearly should be something that is supported fully, not only by the bank, but also by civil society, to be able to enable this engagement to happen. And it's important that civil society is involved fully in the planning, in the execution, and the monitoring of the civil society engagement strategy that is being finalized currently. Now, it would be good to mobilize a broad range of civil society in the design of the CSC strategy. I know that a lot of work has gone in so far. There's still a lot of support that could be done. And I think that, again, the bank should use and work with the committee and members of the committee to reach out widely to the constituencies on the continent of civil society to be able to know more about the strategy and to engage more with it. Strengthening the capacity of the bank staff in civil society, the way civil society works would be productive for the CSC. Deepening civil society knowledge and capacity in the bank, how the bank works, its management, its operations, programs, and policies. And I think that Zeynep did list a number of areas and a number of things that are being done to enable that to happen. And we definitely support that fully, the capacity building plan that is going to come up. Mobilizing civil society participation in the country strategy papers, the projects, the country dialogues. I've already mentioned that and said that we must have a plan for doing that, and in a way that makes it institutionalized, regular, civil society is well informed, they have enough time, and the engagement is more meaningful. Funding civil society committee to implement decisions, yes. The committee, if it has to do the work that it needs to do, also needs the support to enable it to do that. So I think that is one of the areas. But apart from that, other things like even making committee members known to the countries, to the regions. For example, there's a meeting in Ghana on the Africa Development Bank. And this is something that you don't have an organization that is a member of the committee being able to engage because you don't have a formal introduction, you don't have, so these are some of the things that I think that needs to be addressed. Civil society cannot just get up and walk to the AfDB to engage any of the AfDB offices. There must be the introduction of the organizations in a way that enables that engagement to happen meaningfully. And so I think that is one of the things that has to be done. Things must be formalized and institutionalized, and so that it works properly. And then, of course, looking at strategic partnerships with key CSOs in line with the high fives, because you do have civil society organizations that are experts in particular areas that could really enable and facilitate the work of the bank because of their expertise. I definitely agree, and I'm looking again at academia as part of civil society, and I really like the points that was raised about engaging academia. And I think that is one of the areas that, particularly as we look at the high fives, we need data, we need knowledge, we need to have the right kind of information to engage, you know, on these issues. And I think that academia is definitely one of the key constituencies within civil society that should be on board, and there should be a structured way of engaging with them. And of course, with other civil society organizations. So I would like to, can we go on to the next slide? I think this is really the end. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity again to be part of this. And we really look forward to having a more meaningful engagement. We believe that we are on the right track for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nana, for this presentation. We will now be moving to the Q&A session. So I see that bank staff have already started asking a few questions in the chat. I'll be reading them one by one, and one of the panelists will be able to address them. So the first one I saw was from Chitawa, who was saying that regarding financing CSOs, it's more of a comment. The bank should not only be looking up to the use of trust funds, but the bank should explore the possibility of setting aside some portion of its administrative resources to support CSOs. So does one of the panelist speakers wish to address this question? This comment, Edward?
Yes, Najat, thank you very much. I already some sort of answered. Well, I did try to clarify with Mr. Tawa's comment, which is very pertinent, by saying that the mapping which was done was really to identify windows of opportunity that exist within the trust funds that the bank currently has. Whether civil society, for example, during call for proposals, is qualified to apply for the implementation of bank-funded activities through these trust funds. But also to say that we are also envisaging, as he made in this, the point he made in his second comment, to put in place, if that is approved, we are working with firm, if that is approved, to have a standalone civil society engagement trust fund. That is, of course, in line with the comment he made regarding the World Bank. Maybe Zainab has something to add to that.
No, exactly. I think also what he's asking is not only to look at trust fund, but the administrative fund. We are developing tools to mainstream civil society engagement in the project cycle, meaning that it will be part of the bank process of our operations. And to engage civil society organization as implementers partners we are doing now. Currently it's being doing in some regions and some countries, but also civil society organization as third-party monitoring partners, or to engage civil society organization through our operation. I think this is something we need to think about when we are developing the toolkit, to be part of the whole package of mainstreaming civil society engagement, and I fully agree. Now to respond to this question, Najad.
Thank you, Zainab. The second question, sorry, was from Teresa, who was saying, how has been your interaction with the national human rights institutions to ensure human rights-based approach to development and implementation of policies?
I don't know if Jerry is online, if she can respond to that. She has a very good example on human rights, or with working with human rights, taking into account human rights issues on the engagement with civil society organization.
Okay, I don't think Jerry is part of the panel.
She's online.
She's online?
Online.
Okay,
yes,
perfect.
Can you hear me?
Perfect. We can hear you and Jerry. Hi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Najad, and thank you, Zainab. Yes, definitely we do work with civil society organizations that are involved in the advancement of human rights. Particularly when it comes to consultations on CSPs, when it comes to consultations on, policy documents, consultations when we have the CSO Open Days. Now, these organizations would ideally be focusing on, specific thematic areas. It could be in the area of youth. It could be in the area of women's rights, and so on and so forth. It could be in the area of child rights, and so on and so forth. So, yes, we do work with them. And maybe just to give you a practical example is, a case where we have worked, or we've been working with organizations such as Transparency International, where we are not just pushing for accountability, but really just ensuring that specific certain elements that would be leading to the achievement or the protection of human rights is concerned. So we do work with them, and we have a lot of them that are obviously registered in the CSO database. So when we are organizing events, we go to the CSO database and we invite all of them, and they do participate. Of course, they will push their specific thematic areas, but they are always with us and engaging with us. Of course, when you have also organizations that are focusing on, say, for instance, climate change, again, talking about, the impact it has on people, those are human rights issues that we definitely engage on on an ongoing basis. So we do engage all of them across the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Jerry. So that's great. I see many questions. I see Beatrice Muera, I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it well, who is asking, were there any wary issues regarding engagement by bank staff with civil society organizations?
Could I just maybe share,
Go ahead, Jerry, no problem.
Yes. Wary, yes. Again, I think even from the IDEV, assessment, there is no uniformity in the way that the bank engages with CSOs, and understanding and appreciation of staff on the value addition of engaging with CSOs is varied. So in some instances, we do have colleagues who believe that CSOs only want to engage because they're looking for money. And that's not always necessarily the case. And I think what Nana has just elaborated on reaffirms that particular point. Yes, CSOs would require support. They require capacity building, just like any other stakeholder would require capacity building. But we do have organizations that are actually very strong on the ground, are thought leaders, are change leaders, and we as a bank would learn from them. And so, we need to demystify this wary, lack of understanding and suspicion of CSOs. So I know there are instances where we've had challenges, getting colleagues to understand that we need to engage with CSOs, because believe me, when it comes to particularly project implementation, when we encounter challenges on the ground, usually it would be issues raised by CSOs on certain elements to a particular project, whether it's on areas around GBV, displacement of communities, loss of livelihoods, environmental impact, and so on and so forth. So we cannot only be running to CSOs when we grind to a halt in the implementation of projects. So we need to embrace them as key stakeholders and to see them as not just coming to the bank for money, but as stakeholders that can help improve the quality of the delivery of our programs. Thank you.
Thank you, and Jerry. I hope this is clear for everyone. The following question is from Balgis Osman, who says, I think civil society engagement is critical at the different stages of project development, from identification to monitoring and evaluation. And for this to take effect, there is much awareness work to be done at the country, regional levels in order to ensure effective participation of CSOs and to appreciate their role in the process as well as the value added through their engagement. And he is asking, what is the bank doing in this regard? Thank you.
Okay.
I think we,
okay.
Sorry, go on, Ngeri. Go on, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Zeynep did mention that we are working on a toolkit that will help colleagues understand and apply certain elements of civil society engagement in the entire project cycle. There is an inception report which actually did bring up the issues that colleagues are raising in this particular session, and that inception report is what will now lead to the development of the toolkit. That will help now institutionalize civil society engagement in the implementation of projects, at country level. Over to you, Zeynep.
Zeynep?
No, just to complete what he's saying, regarding the awareness, building awareness around what civil society engagement in operation. As I said, we have now civil society officers in the region. Jerry is one of them in RDGS in Southern Africa region, and they're engaging now with the tax team, with civil society in the operation, when we are consulting for project development or country strategic development, as I'm saying, and also we have those open days. This is also, the open days are platform to engage civil society organizations at country level, to have full understanding of what the bank is doing in terms of portfolio, the activities of the bank in the region is part of also of a policy dialogue, large policy dialogue in the country.
Thank you very much, Zeneb. Yes.
Oui, j'ai une question sur la COP 27. C'est ça? Donc, je vais...
Sur la COP 27, je t'en prie, je ne l'ai pas vu.
Africa Pavillon. Je viens de voir ça, je ne sais pas si c'est...
D'accord, tu veux y répondre, Zeneb?
Yes. Is the bank engaged in organizing the Africa Pavilion at this year COP27 in Egypt? This is the question. How do CSOs engage in that process? Okay. This is Joseph, coming from Joseph Muturi. I will respond you in French. Okay, please go to your interpretation. Donc, this year, cette année, la COP 27, c'est la COP de l'Afrique. C'est organisé pour la première fois en Afrique, en Égypte, et la banque, comme elle le faisait chaque année, est engagée pour accompagner la COP, pour accompagner le continent africain pour la COP, en termes d'appui aux négociateurs. Et même cette année, la question des négociateurs femmes a été mise en place, et la banque accompagne les négociateurs, négociatrices africains pour les discussions sur le changement climatique. Cette année, de façon particulière, le Forum de la société civile est sur le thème du changement climatique et de Just Transition in Africa. Déjà, en préparation de la COP, nous sommes en train de travailler à faire de cette rencontre continentale une rencontre de discussion avec la société civile en Afrique sur la position de l'Afrique pour le changement climatique et la transition énergétique. Deuxièmement, nous travaillons avec le département en charge des changements climatiques sur l'accompagnement de la société civile pour le pavillon Afrique. Chaque année, nous sommes présents, nous appuyons la société civile pour organiser des événements qui participent à la COP. En général, ils participent à leurs frais, mais nous facilitons la participation de la société civile dans toutes les activités qui se font au niveau du pavillon Afrique. Et cette année, de façon particulière, avec cet accent particulier sur la COP de l'Afrique, nous comptons organiser un événement pendant la COP au niveau du pavillon Afrique avec la société civile. Donc, c'est un processus dans lequel nous sommes en train de travailler. Nous avons un plan de travail sur cela avec le département en charge du changement climatique. Et nous sommes en train de mettre en place une coalition de la société civile sur la préparation de la COP.
Okay, thank you very much, Zeneb. I see that there's Lola Visser Mabugunje, who is the advisor on stakeholder engagement to the president at the bank, who would like to make an observation in respect of a study that she recently concluded on civil society engagement, I think. Is it possible for her to speak, IT? Dorsaf?
Yes.
Yes. Can the participants speak?
Yes.
Okay. So Lola, you may take the floor. She's not connected.
She actually lowered her hand.
Okay. She was raising her hand. Lola, can you hear us?
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for this invitation. Recently, I carried a study on behalf of the bank to look at stakeholder engagement for the 54 RMCs. And the focus was on the focal point in the office of the governors and the directors of protocol. And when it got to CSO questions, a number of people told me that the bank was not engaging enough with CSOs in their country. But then at the head office, I'm sitting with Maria in meetings and we have meetings with CSO. So my question is, how come these people not to be aware of what the bank is doing with CSOs in their country? And the second question was about monitoring, because they claim that the bank, when they do their monitoring, they are not involved, that the tax team leader just come in twice a year and stay for 1 week and go. That is that the way monitoring is done, and that monitoring is also to assist the beneficiaries in building their capacity in data collection, but the bank is not doing that. So those are the two issues, and I'm finalizing my report this week. So this is very timely because, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lola, for this very relevant observation. I think we have a question from Teresa again, who is asking, how does the bank incorporate lessons learned from complaints filed with its accountability mechanism as far as development and implementation of bank guidelines and standards are concerned? So anyone wishes to respond on this? Edward, perhaps?
Yeah, Najat, thank you very much. I would say that for the independent review mechanism, of course, they are independent. So once civil society has submitted a complaint, that will have to be addressed by the IRM process. But the lessons learned, one of them is that we need to address requests coming from civil society, because at times they want information about the bank's work. And as we heard from Madame Lola a while ago, at country level, people still say, and especially CSOs, they are not aware of what the bank is doing in their countries. So we are working on improving that. And first, with a guideline on how to handle requests. When requests come from civil society at country level, how do we handle them to ensure that we provide the appropriate feedback to civil society? But of course, one of the other lessons we are learning from the complaints that come through the IRM process is that civil society engagement will help upstream to reduce, of course, the number of complaints that come in, because if we engage communities, if we engage beneficiaries and civil society at country level during the preparation, design, implementation, evaluation of projects, that will, of course, definitely reduce the number of complaints that will come in. So those are some of the lessons, as I said, and earlier speakers, the manager, Jerry, also mentioned it. We are working on a number of tools that will help staff adequately engage with civil society at country level, a toolkit for civil society engagement in projects, a toolkit, guidelines for civil society engagement in country strategy papers, a capacity building program. Most of those tools and resources we are developing will help to ensure that civil society is not only engaged, but that we mitigate the risk of getting to the stage of civil society complaining about the impact of bank projects on affected communities. Thank you. Maybe Zaneb has something to add with that. On Jerry?
No, I think you did. You said everything. I just want to, for the experience of Lola. Thanks very much, Lola, for sharing this the result of the study, and we will be very happy to have the result, the report, to see how we can improve civil society engagement in the region. but also to know in which countries those feedback have been said. It's important because now we have civil society officer. If it's not a full staff, it is permanent consultant dedicated to each of the region, and we are part of the tax teams. But we will be happy to see the report and to see how we can improve in the region where we still have some challenges. Thank you. Najat, je pense que c'est toutes les questions qui ont été posées.
Oui, il en reste juste une. On va pouvoir y répondre avant de wrap up et de passer à la prochaine session. Comme ça, on reste dans les temps. Excusez-moi au public, hein, je change rapidement au français pour les interprètes aussi. On prend juste une toute dernière question qui est de Titi Agbae de la Coalition pour les droits humains dans le développement et qui s'adresse à toi, Zeynep. Sur ce que tu viens de mentionner au sujet de la COP. Donc, comment sont choisis les membres de ce comité de la société civile qui travaille sur la préparation de la COP et quelles sont les modalités? Voilà.
Non, pour le moment, nous n'avons pas encore mis en place les critères, mais comme je l'ai dit, c'est un partenariat avec le département en charge des changements climatiques. Bien sûr que c'est des organisations qui travaillent spécifiquement sur ces questions et nous allons alterner des organisations, des umbrella organizations, des grands réseaux qui travaillent et qui représentent le continent. Et nous allons aussi identifier des grassroots organizations pour aussi la perspective des communautés de base sur les questions des changements climatiques. Donc, c'est un peu cela. Et si cette personne est intéressée, elle peut toujours laisser ses contacts pour que nous puissions voir comment on peut engager les discussions avec elle. Et puis aussi, il faut dire que pendant la COP, pendant le forum de la société civile, que nous avons des sessions thématiques et des sessions techniques qui vont se tenir en forme de round table, des tables rondes de discussion. Et une des tables rondes, ça sera sur les changements climatiques. Et nous encourageons cette organisation aussi à faire partie de cette session-là, parce que ça sera des sessions, des working group sessions.
OK, merci beaucoup Zeynep. Juste pour information, je vais repasser à l'anglais et je vais rester à l'anglais. Donc, we will now, so this is the end of the Q&A session. Thank you all for this very fruitful discussion. The aim of this session was to be able to exchange with you. Please, if you have any questions, you are all bank staff, so you have the names of the staff who intervened, and you can email them if you have any additional questions or comments. Before we move on to the third part of this event, we will just play a short video so that if you want also, you can have a look at it. It's very, very interesting. And it gives you the possibility to stand up and just go grab a coffee before we resume in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Les objectifs de l'Afrique ne pourront être atteints sans un engagement actif de la société civile, car la société civile, plus que tout autre acteur, constitue le lien le plus approprié entre nos priorités de développement et les aspirations collectives des populations africaines.
La société civile est importante, nous interagissons avec elle dans nos stratégies et projets, mais dans la période post-Covid, il nous faut aller au-delà et innover. La transformation économique doit apporter la résilience, la transformation économique doit apporter l'emploi.
Déjà, je remercie la décentralisation. Peut-être que ça va nous rapprocher encore plus de la banque parce que justement, le souci premier était de voir la banque comme l'ONU pour nous, villageoises, vous voyez, un peu trop perché et pas tout près des populations.
Il faut voir se surpasser, ne pas aimer la facilité, C'est le moment de se surpasser pour qu'on ait les meilleures propositions et qu'on ait les meilleurs acteurs. C'est seulement les jeunes eux-mêmes, avec l'accompagnement d'autres adultes, des institutions, qui sauront trouver les meilleures solutions à leurs problèmes.
Although we are in the Northern African countries, we have possibilities for integration, but we have a lot of also political challenges. When we look to the challenges between Algeria and Morocco, between Egypt and Libya, between Egypt and Tunisia, and so on.
On est conscient que nous avons en nous-mêmes le pouvoir de façonner les institutions qui aujourd'hui nous gouvernent. La société civile, dès lors qu'elle est connectée sur le terrain, elle peut enrichir l'intégration régionale. Et grâce à quoi? Grâce à un outil que moi, je ne cesse de répandre, de discuter et d'agiter, c'est le leadership. Parce que le leadership, c'est ce qui nous manque aujourd'hui cruellement dans la région.
But we need to assure you and remind that we are all civil society. So sometimes we behave as if we are the bank, but when it hits us, that's when we remember that civil society plays a very important role. They are like police officers or teachers or medical doctors. You only realize their importance when it hits home. So we don't take your sacrifices and commitments for granted.
How do we achieve real, sustainable, and inclusive change? Education remains a critical foundation for all and is inextricably linked with social justice, economic development, and climate action. This is about collective responsibility, and I believe fundamentally that together we can.
Good management of debt is paramount. So we shouldn't be penalizing governments for taking debt. In fact, it is not possible to develop without debt.
We need to have innovative and rapid collective action for women enterprises to access market intelligence, to access working capital, to access incubation and graduation that is specially focused and special for women entrepreneurs.
The world is facing enormous challenges. An effective and inclusive response to this pandemic has to be people-centered, and the various institutions involved in the response have to seize this opportunity to explore new ways of engagement. I'm sorry it cannot be business as usual. We have to innovate, we have to engage, and we have to form new partnerships.
When agriculture stimulates growth in Africa, it's usually twice effective in reducing poverty and improving growth more than other sectors. And this can be further accelerated through mutual partnerships to leverage on the strength of each other. We all have different strengths as public, as private sector actors, but we only need to leverage on the strength of each other.
À travers son engagement avec la société civile, la Banque africaine de développement compte maximiser l'impact des initiatives importantes en termes de développement afin de garantir la participation des bénéficiaires pour une croissance économique plus inclusive et axée sur les personnes.
The bank is committed to ensuring that civil society is very much a part and parcel of what it does. And it is important that as civil society, we also bring to the table what are the key areas that we think we could work on to strengthen these linkages.
Thank you very much for this video. I find it very interesting to see how involved the civil society engagement division is in regions and country offices, because I think this video was filmed in the context of all their regional forums. So this is very interesting to see. We will now move on to the third part, which is the future, what is needed to leverage the bank's civil society engagement. And we will be having a presentation of the roadmap for developing the new civil society engagement strategy by Edward Nsobe, who is the Senior Civil Society Engagement Capacity Building Officer. Thank you, Edward.
Thank you very much, Najat. Good morning, colleagues. And it's my pleasure to present the roadmap that we are putting in place to develop and design a civil society engagement strategy for the bank, which is one of the key recommendations of the BDEV evaluation, which is being presented to us today. Slide. Yeah, so a quick look at the background in 2 points. The CSE strategy, of course, as I said a while ago, is one of the key recommendations of BDEV's evaluation, and it will help the bank to determine ways, mechanisms, and resources for mainstreaming, to better mainstream civil society engagement into bank policies and operations. And the strategy shall include a strategy document, an action plan, a CSE financing mechanism, an M&E tracking system, that's monitoring and evaluation tracking system, and a communication plan. Slide. Yeah, looking at the roadmap, the duration of the strategy will be from 2023 to 2028. So it's over a 5-year period. And we are setting up, an interdepartmental working group has been set up. It is an institutional requirement of the bank to ensure that the final product is reflective of the one bank approach model of our work. And the guidance and validation role of the interdepartmental working group is also important to highlight here. The elaboration of the concept note to be submitted to SMCC, that has been finalized, the concept note, and the approval process is ongoing. Multi-stakeholder consultations with CSOs in Africa, with sister organizations, with relevant institutions, in order to ensure alignment with continental and global trends, agendas, and priorities. Slide. Now we look at the proposed pillars of the CSE strategy. There are 3 of them. The first proposed pillar is ensuring an enabling environment for CSE. That is strengthening institutional capacity on civil society engagement, legal framework, and operational capacities as enablers. And secondly, the stronger civil society organizations are, that is the second consideration under pillar 1, the better they will be to function as independent voices to inform the bank's operations. Pillar number 2 has to do with mainstreaming civil society engagement in bank policies, operations, and projects for better impact. First consideration, strengthening the bank's engagement with civil society at community level on projects. And secondly, ensuring that the intended impacts are being well monitored and achieved. And pillar number 3 has to do with enhancing advocacy on civil society with 2 considerations also. The first, supporting civil society organizations on advocacy work to promote Africa's development and the high fives in countries. And secondly, to help accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2063 of the African Union, as well as other national, regional engagements such as country nationally determined contributions, especially the country national development strategies. Next slide. Yeah, of course, that is just the quick rundown, which highlights what we've put together as a roadmap for the preparation of the civil society engagement strategy. Thank you very much, Najat. And thank you for your kind attention, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Edward. We shall now move on to the last session, but a quick parenthesis. I just saw that Maria Mulindi was raising her hand. So I don't know, Maria, if you wish to hop in between two sessions to take the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Najad. And about that, I really had raised my hand to say a big thank you and just to commend the team, because we have been together on and off since 2016-17. And I see from, especially in the field, it's quite obvious how far we have gone with engaging with task managers, engaging with the country teams and the regional teams. There seems to be a willingness, despite the lack of funding, there's a willingness amongst our staff to engage with civil society. We are all on different levels when it comes to our understanding of the value added, but we are slowly getting there. So I just wanted to commend the team and also to talk about IDEV, because I believe exactly what they mentioned as recommendations are the things the bank requires to engage. They were spot on. Those are the things we require to engage with civil society. There are several issues in there, especially when it comes to youth and women, that really within the complex and the department of gender and civil society, they should be able to unlock those issues quite easy, because it's about synergizing and working together across the different divisions. So mine was really just to commend the team and to commend IDEV for a wonderful report. I had read it before, but also just to say, I see a lot of movement since 2017, and especially with the civil society officers based out in the regions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this comment. And indeed, you can see that departments are more and more involving civil society organizations, and it's becoming the new normal. So we're heading there, and the team is doing an excellent job. We will now be moving to the last session, which is moving forward, designing a robust new civil society engagement strategy. And the discussants are Pietro Toigo, who is the country manager for Angola and Sao Tome and Principe, and Florence Freda Dennis, who is the division manager at the Office of Integrity, and Anti-Corruption. And this session will be moderated by Basil Jones, who is the coordinator at the Gender, Women, and Civil Society Department. Thank you all.
Thank you, Najat. Thank you very much, colleagues, and good morning, everyone. And just to appreciate the different discussion and the questions that have been raised in the previous panel. And thanks for introducing our two panelists, Pedro, the country manager for Angola and Sao Tome, and prior to that, he was the country manager for Mozambique. So he's got a lot of field experience that he can share with us. And also to Madam Florence Dennis, who is the manager in the INPIAC, Integrity and Anti-Corruption Department. And they would give us a perspective from both the operations and also from the corporate side. But let me first just re-echo Maria Mulindi's sentiments in thanking the team, especially for those of us who have been with the team and when the whole CSO engagement started with the president when he was appointed, and he had the foresight to create a new gender, women, and civil society department. And we had, for the first time in the bank, civil society engagement division. There was a time when for the whole bank, there was only one CSO officer. But I think between 2016, 2017, as Maria Mulindi said, and we had a lot of engagement with civil society all across the continent. And that helped us in looking at what are the needs and what are the areas of focus. And this has now been reinforced with the BDEV evaluation of the CSC strategy. So I just wanted to add that and to commend my colleagues in the CSC team for the tremendous work that they're doing. We've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. So with that few remarks, I would just like to start with Pedro, coming from the region. What are some of the lessons you have learned in terms of lessons and challenges with working with civil society on the ground, given the role that you are playing as a country manager in Angola and Sao Tome, and also the role that you played as country manager in Mozambique? So if you can share with us some of the lessons and the challenges of working with civil society. You have the floor now.
Thank you, Basil, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here. This is a very interesting issue, especially for those like us who work on the front line, inverted comma, of engagement with our clients and stakeholders. I think the main challenge has been discussed, which is the financing structure of the bank means that our prime recipient of funds is either the government or a private entity that needs to finance itself sustainably and repay its debt. So it's relatively complicated to meet what is the expectation of some civil society organizations to receive direct funding for their activities. Because simply the business model is different for a multilateral like us from, for example, bilateral. And so a lot of the challenge is actually to be clear and explain what is the expectation and what is the underlying business model. But nevertheless, I think we also heard that the bank has a commitment to engage. And that commitment is about improving the impact of our projects. I think it was articulated by President Tadeshina, and I think it's very clear what we want to get out of our engagement with civil society is to understand better what happens on the ground and design and implement our programs in a more effective way. And it's worthwhile to mention that even within the constraints that we meet in terms of working directly with CSOs, nevertheless, we do manage to work and finance CSO activities. So let me make an example. In Angola, we have two important partnerships, one with World Vision Angola, where they provide financial literacy services and business development services to small agro producers and fishermen and fish traders in one of our projects in Cabinda, and they manage over $1 million, over $4 million worth of finance. We also work with development workshop where they actually carry out studies for us on the impact of water sanitation on some specific peri-urban areas. In Sao Tome and Principe, we actually managed to go even one level below in terms of the size of the CSO we partner with. And so we have a partner with Sao Tomean CSO, Adapa, Lisei, Kitela, Marapa, Zatona, all community-based CSOs who work specifically on advising on food processing and food distribution in some of our programs. And also, given you mentioned Basil, I worked in Mozambique. It's worth mentioning also what was done in Mozambique with a large non-sovereign operation, the LNG1 project, where part of the negotiation between the bank and the implementer of the project was that the implementer, the developer, would set up a monitoring group made up of local NGOs to monitor the social and environmental impact of the LNG project. So there are ways where we can try and work with CSOs, but I think it also takes an understanding from the CSOs that the issue here is that if they want to work with us, they also need to propose themselves to the government or to the private sector as credible and capable implementer of the objectives of the program. And if that is done, then there's obviously a lot of opening from the African Development Bank to work with civil society organizations.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I think you have highlighted some very critical issues of how we are engaging civil society in Angola, in Mozambique, and in Sao Tome in terms of their contribution and the value that they're adding to bank operations. One of the areas as an institution that we really do not sell ourselves, we do not, the successes and the results, we do not document it. And I think this is a good lesson here, which you have highlighted, that there's a lot that is going on in the bank's engagement. So hopefully this is something that we will look at going forward in the new strategy. How do we now start documenting some of these examples that you have quoted in how the bank is engaging with civil society, World Vision in Cabinda, doing knowledge work. The civil society representative from WACSI talked about engaging knowledge institutions, universities. You talked about how they're engaging in water and sanitation, and also the example you gave in a non-sovereign operation. So it just shows you that the bank is engaging with civil society at the country level in both sovereign and in non-sovereign operation. And like I said, I think we need to do a much better job of documenting some of these engagements and results and presenting these results on what the bank is doing. So let me now move to Madam Florence Dennis, who is with the Anti-Corruption Department, Integrated and Anti-Corruption Department. Florence, what is the added value of civil society engagement from a corporate perspective, especially with regards to accountability and the fight against corruption, which is one of the areas of focus of the work that you do for the bank?
Thank you very much, Jones, for your question. And let me also thank Zaneb and the team and the colleagues, as Maria Mulindi said, for the work that they have done. We see the bank really progressing from one staff to now a whole team in regional offices, and we are really proud of it. In the fight against corruption, we cannot underestimate the role of the civil society organizations. And this is very important for the bank and also important for our regional member countries. Now, why do we say so? We say so because civil society promotes transparency through research and demand release of information on public spending using the freedom of information that are passed in the various countries. And these are mechanisms that we cannot underestimate because we get a lot of information. They also ensure accountability, both in our projects and also in the regional member countries. They are the watchdogs. They help to monitor public spending and implement various activities, both at the anti-corruption level and at good governance level, ensuring that at the country level, there are good laws and processes and policies and programs that ensure that there is accountability. Civil society is also involved in advocacy, which is key. They provide advocacy on good governance and also we should say pressurize government and other key stakeholders to adopt appropriate anti-corruption and good governance measures. Just last week, I spoke at the forum of a cost where they were looking at transparency in construction projects, infrastructure projects. And you could see the work of civil society bringing light to procurement processes, engaging government, engaging the private sector contractors on how to improve projects. And it's something that we do it at a different level, and they also do it at the country level. They also bring awareness, raising campaigns and programming, which sensitizes the public and all of us to abhor corrupt practices and also ensures behavioral change. And I should say that a lot of the anti-corruption agencies in our countries rely on civil society to provide them with the support that they require to play their roles as anti-corruption agencies, because sometimes they have challenges. With the bank in particular and with PIAC, I should say that a lot of the investigations that we conduct are from civil society organization, individuals at the project level, organization at the project level, and I'm sure we know also that in terms of the CRMU department also, they also receive a lot. And without them, I should say that we are not on the ground in the local areas, in the communities where our projects are being done, and they are there to provide us with any information, any misuse of resources, or anything that will ensure that our reputation or integrity will be at stake. So I think we cannot underestimate the role of civil society as we embark as a bank on ensuring that the fight against corruption is strengthened, not only in our processes, but also in the bank as a whole and the continent as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Thank you for that very clear remarks on how the bank is engaging with civil society, especially when it comes to issues of anti-corruption and the useful input and feedback that they give us. In, as you said, most of your investigation emanates from what the civil society organization at the country level share with you. In other words, they are the eyes and the ears of the bank in the country level, especially at the community level, where the bank operations do take place, and they have a critical role to play, and that is basically what we want. We want to see more transparency in the way that the resources that the bank provides for our countries are utilized, and engaging with civil society is critical to achieving that success. Let me ask my second question now to Pedro. How can your experience of engaging civil society help, especially with the design of the new strategy, which will take into account the expectations and aspiration of beneficiaries and community? So we just want to hear your views and what you can share with us as we develop this new CSE strategy as presented by Edward, so that we create the expectations on how the expectations and aspirations of beneficiaries and communities can be integrated within those three pillars that we are mentioned by Edward. Over to you, Pedro.
Thank you. Well, and I'm looking forward to contribute to the development of this piece of work, very much so. I think first of all, information is key in terms of engagement with civil society. I think we do an increasing use of open days as a way to engage with civil society. I remember organizing a couple of very successful one. One was remote, virtual, working with the colleagues, with your team, Basil, in Mozambique, and we're thinking of when is a good time to organize one in Angola. And also looking at information, I think we should also give ourselves credit when it's due. The African Development Bank scored as the top official development assistance provider in the aid transparency ranking of Publish What You Pay. That was a news from last week. So that is crucial, because it means that we are the most transparent in terms of what we do, and that's an important platform for CSOs to engage and really to have unfettered access to the information that they need to come and talk to us. So I'd like to emphasize this aspect and also congratulate the colleagues who've been working on this, on the transparency issues for our own financing flows. In terms of writing a strategy, obviously every country is different. The dynamic between CSOs and the government and society are quite different. Some countries have a very externally direct CSOs in terms of being massively funded from external players. Some have more indigenous growing CSOs. Some have a more restricted space for CSOs. So we need to really consider, obviously, and this is why we have a decentralized structure, the case by case dynamics as we structure our strategy. The strategy needs to be flexible enough to incorporate different realities on the ground. Then we need to really look at CSOs in a very broad sense. Industrial associations are a very important part of civil society that can advance policy advocacy in terms of transparency in doing business, in terms of improving policies, in terms of impact. And so we should also consider our engagement with the private sector as part of our engagement with civil society. Private sector also very important for the anti-corruption fight in terms of leveraging the various procurement processes to allow people to do recourse when things have not been executed the way they should have. And I would like just to mention, for example, the experience in Mozambique, where we have a very in-depth engagement with the Confederation of Trade Associations, up to the point that we actually managed to mobilize a special fund to work with them and to help them advocate for policies for the private sector, as well as working with them, for example, to shape their annual conference to make it look like a mini Africa investment forum with boards and investor pitches. That was a very interesting experience. But also we shouldn't forget academia, has been mentioned. It's very important that we think about how to strategically engage academia as centers of knowledge and as centers of advocacy, and also as a center of creation of human capital. And crucially, I think, we need to think about how we engage with media. Media are a tool for us to go out and explain to the national community what we do, but they're also a key part of transparency and accountability in any one nation. So how do we engage? How do we engage with them? Must be an element crucial to civil society engagement. I close with a note of realism, if you allow me. I think we've done great strides in decentralization, and that's essential for engagement. But I think even compared to other development finance institutions, we're still radically understaffed in the country offices. When I arrived in Angola, we have $1 billion investment, and I did not have a single sector expert on the ground. That's being corrected, but it's just an example in terms of being realistic when we write our strategy about what can realistically done for a given level of staffing on the ground. But the more staffing we had and the more experts we have, if we have a permanent agriculture expert or maybe two, then you can start saying, I want to engage with all the farmer associations, with all the community-based producer associations. And there you can really see what works on the ground. Some of our countries are enormous, right? They are the size of a continent. And so we really need that more stronger presence on the ground to really engage with all the aspects of CSOs and not just be limited to those CSOs that sit in the capital and have a more institutionalized institutionalized role. So that's, I close with a plea, and certainly I am batting my own corner, obviously, as a country manager in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pedro. Let me now go to the second question for Madam Florence Dennis. How do we ensure through the new CSC strategy that civil society is effectively and actively contributing to inclusive economic growth in the continent, which is what we want? So the new CSC strategy should help us and assist the bank to achieve one of its goals in our new strategy, that is to have more inclusive growth in the continent so that no one will be left behind. So if you can just share with us some few opinions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think previous speakers and Petro has touched on some key areas that I think needs to be stressed. Media. I mean, we've talked about capacity building, and capacity building should be comprehensive and it should incorporate all the stakeholders. Media is an area that I think we need to focus on a lot, and we should realize that in our regional member countries, there are now community-based radio stations who also disseminate a lot of information at the local level, and their knowledge of what is happening on our projects in the community will be key in ensuring that they disseminate the right information, and also when they are providing feedback, it is appropriate and fit for purpose, and not to also send the wrong signals out there. So in connection with this, whilst we are looking at mapping CSO, and Petro said we need to map the broad spectrum of CSOs. We have the local, the international, the regional ones. How do we engage in each of them, and what capacities will we need to engage in the various stages? Because all the community based have a different role from the national. Their levels of work is also different. Some of them cannot do research. Some of them can do advocacy. How do we link them? And how do we ensure that our engagement with them is all compassing? And also, it's important, the capacity building, we've been talking about it, but I think why we need capacity building is that we should ensure that when we want to sit with civil society, they have the right information to engage. If we do not build their capacity, we'll then be with them and they will not have the right information. I think Nana Afad-Janu also picked on some of those issues. And then building their capacity on integrity issues is very, very important. I'm sure some of you might know that the bank engaged with some CSOs on projects in certain areas, and there were real integrity concerns. It's something that we should not underestimate. We should know who we are working with. We should do the necessary due diligence on them. And as we are looking, we are saying that they should be funded, or even they should be recommended for some sort of engagement. Then we should ensure that we are dealing with the right entities, that the same integrity concerns will not come up. We also talked about knowledge products. I think the academia actually said is key. If we are able to encourage development of knowledge products, it will enhance more constructive engagement through the contribution of evidence-based policy alternative and evidence-driven assessment of government policies and our own policies and development interventions, so that it's more constructive and is sustainable for the future. My last point is that we have to work with civil society who are independent. How do we ensure that they are independent? We need to also find ways of their integrity, the work that they do, the focus, not dealing with ad hoc CSO, because we have to ensure that we are dealing with credible institutions who will continue to exist irrespective of the circumstances that happen. I think through these things, we'll be able to know how civil society will also then provide that feedback into our processes and work with that on a sustainable basis. If we are able to capture some of these things, I think our holistic objective of an inclusive growth on the continent will be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Florence, and also thank you, Pedro, for those very useful inputs and commentary that you've given us from your perspective, both from the operations side in the field, in the region, and also from the corporate side. So I will not try to summarize, but just in the interest of time, I would hand over to Najat, because I see we have quite a number of questions, and I think it's good we have this useful engagement and discussion. So Najat, over to you so that you can moderate the Q&A for, our colleagues from the CSO division are also available. And one thing that I might want to highlight for Zainab and the team is perhaps you can just talk about the engagement we are doing with CSO for the ADF's replenishment and how they participated in ADF 15 and what are the plans for ADF 16 replenishment. I think that's useful information to share with colleagues because we are all involved in the process of the ADF 16 replenishment. Over to you, Najat.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Florence, Pietro, Basile, for this very insightful conversation. It's true that we had not planned a Q&A following this session. So we're going to take a few questions though. And as I said, do not hesitate to send emails if you have any further questions or comments. We'll take maybe 2 questions. I'm having difficulties accessing the chat. So Basile, if you're able to access the chat, can you just read out loud one question? Apologies. And we'll address them, and then we'll move to the closing remarks.
Okay, let me see. There's a long one here from Nana. Actually, this is a very long one. I don't know if Nana would want to summarize it.
Maybe Nana can.
I think that's more of a comment.
It's a response.
Yes.
It's a response to the previous question.
Yeah. Oh, okay, it's a response. Okay, then that's fine. I thought it was okay, all right, because it's a bit long.
Yeah.
No, apart from that, I don't know. I've not seen any
questions.
Edward, have you seen any? There's one from Siri. Would reliance on bank financing of CSO not jeopardize their CSO's ability to be honest partners in implementing highly sensitive projects, the monitoring and evaluation? That's a question from Siri.
Maybe I will allow my colleague Njeri, who is on the ground. Yeah, Njeri.
Okay, and Jerry, go ahead. Thank you.
I think Nana adequately responded
to
that particular question.
Yeah.
I don't need to add any other points here.
Exactly. You're right.
Okay, then that's fine. Then over to you, Najat. Maybe we go to the next session.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all. So the session is coming to an end. We are now moving to the closing remarks by Malado Kaba, who is the director for the Gender, Women, and Civil Society department. So Mrs. Kaba, over to you. Mrs. Kaba? Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm starting to appear. Thank you very much for, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me and see me well. So my name is Malado Kaba. I'm the newly recruited director for the Department Women, Gender and Civil Society. And it gives me a lot of pleasure actually to first to have participated in this important session and secondly also to be amongst extremely knowledgeable people, staff, civil society participants as well. First, I would like to also congratulate our colleagues from the IDEV department for this very insightful, useful and relevant report. And I also would like to congratulate the team for organizing such an event, for also very insightful exchanges, views. I would like maybe to start by a few remarks. I won't take too long. But number one, I believe that, of course, this session comes at a very opportune time as we are heading, to the Civil Society Forum. We are actually preparing this, the 2022 Civil Society Forum. I believe also that it is extremely timely when it comes to the civil society engagement strategy that Zeynep and also Edward mentioned earlier on. So obviously what we discussed today, what we also read in the report are key elements that will feed into the elaboration, the development of this strategy. I also believe that it is extremely timely considering the context, the global context. We are still, of course, in the middle of a pandemic that lingers on. And I believe that one of the lessons of this pandemic has been that we cannot do things alone in silos. We've seen across the continent, but also globally, many interventions, actions done jointly by governments, business, and civil society organizations. And we know that by doing things together, we know that we will achieve greater impact. We also know that this will bring inclusion. And this is absolutely important when it comes to the continent and when it comes to the issues related to this continent, which pertain to its economic and structural transformation. So I believe that what we discussed today in this regard is absolutely useful. And I can see that we are all on the same page. What we discussed reflected how we are all moving towards one common goal, which is making civil society a key partner and contributing to the inclusive development of our continent. And I'm glad here that we were able to conduct this exercise internally and enable our colleagues also to understand the findings and obtain their feedback on the practical implementation of the recommendations, thus becoming also our best advocates for civil society engagement. And that also makes me think that civil society is today where, gender was several decades ago. And by listening to the discussion today, I also measure, how far we have come. And I believe as a bank, we have done quite meaningful actions to increase our civil society engagement. But of course, much remains to be done. And I believe that what we have discussed also lays the ground for future actions that we will be doing together. The knowledge event touched on 3 key topics, and how has the bank engaged with civil society? What is the bank doing to improve civil society engagement? And what is needed to leverage the bank's civil society engagement? These 3 questions have shaped the discussions and have helped bank staff better understand, I hope, the current engagement with civil society, what we are lacking, where we are headed, and why civil society engagement needs to be mainstreamed across all banks' projects and programs. I am fully confident that we will achieve our goal of mainstreaming civil society engagement in every bank's funded operations. We are committed to work together with all relevant stakeholders, both internal and external, in the design of the civil society engagement strategy. One of the key recommendations of the evaluation, as well as the strengthening our presence at the country and regional levels. The conversation must go on beyond this meeting. The most important issue now is how we will move forward in ensuring that the civil society strategy is adopted by all and collectively implemented. We must continue the engagement process at all levels and push for further consultations, participation in the process. The next phase of the dissemination knowledge event will focus on civil society organizations to be informed on the findings and recommendations, but also on their full support in the development of the new strategy I mentioned earlier on. I truly look forward to the many other conversations that we will be having, but most of all, I look forward to the actions that will be undertaken. So once again, I would like to thank you all for your participation, very active participation, and your interest in moving forward the agenda of the civil society engagement in the bank. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kaba, for this. And I would like to thank you all for your participation, your active participation, as Mrs. Kaba said. And this is the end of the session. So as mentioned earlier, do not hesitate to reach out to colleagues if you have any further questions, comments, or wish to discuss more. Thank you all and have a great day.